So good evening. I'm Jessica DiLorenzo. I'm the Director of Student Services for Pembroke. We are so happy we have such a big crowd tonight. This is the first. This is the largest crowd we've had. So thank you for coming out. I know it's hard on a weeknight and winter, but we do appreciate it. Our presentation tonight is on managing anxiety. And we have 4 out of our 5 social workers here tonight, so I will have them introduce themselves and then just share where they work, which is also posted, just so you are aware and you can share with friends as well. If they weren't able to attend, we are now televising or videotaping, I should say, PAC TV airs it on their site as well as putting it on our website, and you may have noticed, and if not, please check out the last few presentations are still there. In addition, we offer additional resources on our website under Student Services. So included there will be this presentation from tonight and any other resources on this topic, and then others as well. We tend to ask that if you have general questions about the content of what's being presented, we're happy to answer any of those questions, and that if you have specific questions, obviously that would breach confidentiality of your child or another child that you may have a question about, or a family member, that you save those either to the end that I'm happy to kind of direct you, or you could always follow up with any of the social workers in the buildings if you have more specific questions or concerns about your child. So I will let them introduce themselves, and like I said, you're welcome to ask what kind of general questions as it goes along. We try to keep this pretty informal. There are some handouts at the end, or you can grab them whenever, that will go along with their presentations. It's not the exact PowerPoint, but they're supporting documents as well. And again, those will be posted for you. So, Rachel?
I'm Rachel McGowan. I am one of the school social workers over at the high school, and I'm currently working with grades 11 and 12 this year.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Martin. I'm a social worker at North Pembroke Elementary School, which is pre-K through 6.
I'm Cheryl Larson. I'm the social worker at Bryanttville, which is K through 6.
And I'm Holly Garrity. I'm the school social worker at the high school as well with Rachel, and I work with grades 9 and 10.
And then Amanda Carr wasn't able to attend this evening, but she works at the middle school and here at Havamock.
Yeah. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about what is anxiety and go over the physical and emotional signs. And then we're going to get into some tools to help your child, some communication strategies and other tips. And then we'll provide some outpatient referrals as well as identify school-based staff in each building. And then talk about the importance of self-care. And then we'll finish up with, like Ms. Duncanson said, some general questions. So the definition of anxiety, which you all know or you wouldn't be here, but in an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes. So a little anxiety can be helpful. It can be motivational. For example, studying for exams. Last week at the high school was midterm exams, and students were very anxious and stressed out, but it helped them to know they needed to study for midterm exams. Even if they don't always study for quizzes and little exams, they knew midterm exam was a big deal and the anxiety in the building was very high. It can work as a protection of danger when they have that feeling of something is unsafe or dangerous. As well as it can improve performance, for example, before sporting events to help students do better. Yet, too much can be detrimental. It can be very distressing, it can lead to avoidance, it can interfere with functioning, as well as can lead to other potential mental health issues like depression.
So as Holly already mentioned, anxiety and worry can protect us from danger, and this happens when our fight or flight response is activated in part of our nervous system, and this is activated by hormones that we have in our body, both adrenaline and cortisol. So what happens, these hormones trigger physical changes within our body. So for example, myself right now, public speaking is ironically quite anxiety provoking for me. So my heart is pounding or racing right now. I'm a little warmer than normal. I feel like my voice is trembling a little bit. Maybe you don't notice it, but I do. And I'm definitely shaking a little bit. So those are my personal signs of anxiety. Other people might have headaches, or they might feel nauseous, upset to their stomach, shortness of breath, might even feel dizzy or faint, as well as tense in their muscles, and might see changes with sleep habits or changing in their eating habits when they experience anxiety. So some of the other signs of anxiety that are not always physical, you might see somatic complaints. So that would be frequent headaches, upset stomach, and these might be examples of students or your child presenting at the nurse frequently, and there might be no underlying medical reason. Like they might not have, they might not have an illness, there might not be a fever or anything associated with those headaches or upset stomachs. Sometimes people with anxiety, you might notice worried thoughts, so unrealistic worries or demands of themselves, concerns about what might happen in a given situation, fear they're going to be going crazy or might die, or might be hyper-focused on medical things going on with them. They might also have a fear of evaluation in social situations. And this could be, for example, like in school, like lunchtime or recess at the elementary level. These types of social situations can be anxiety-provoking for students. And they might also be concerned with being perfect and having to do everything correctly. You might see behavioral changes, such as avoidance of situations where there might be an evaluation. So, anxiety on days when there might be a test. Holly mentioned midterms last week at the high school level. You might also see social withdrawal, as well as trouble relaxing and the excessive need for reassurance that everything is going to be okay. You might also see changes in cognitive abilities, such as difficulty concentrating or being very easily distracted. And sometimes anxiety, as Holly kind of mentioned, can also present with mood changes, such as feeling unhappy or even increased in irritabilityness.
So some successful communication strategies. I feel like this is kind of the nitty-gritty where you get the information about what you can do with your child. So we really want to use opportunities as they arise to talk about any difficulties that they may be having. Favorite place to have these conversations is in the car, because you are staring straight ahead, your child is staring straight ahead, and you don't have to have that eye contact, which can be really tough for students who have anxiety. We want to talk with them, but we really want to just listen more to what they're saying. Use any kind of interviewing skills that you may have to try to have them open up with you and let them kind of lead the conversation. We want to start conversations with them. We want to share information about your day, your experiences, and your feelings so that you model the exchange for them. That way they learn how to have these conversations and how they can then go and do it with other people. We want to listen, repeat, empathize, and respond to them. We don't necessarily want to solve all of their problems because we want to work with them to help them learn how to solve them, but sometimes they just want to vent. They might just need to get it out, and you need to be that sounding board for them without trying to jump in and be Mama Bear protective, or Papa Bear. We also want to really put your phone down, away. At the high school, we have a rule that phones are down and away. Students don't always follow it. I yelled at one of my students today for a good 5 minutes to put her phone away, but it really shows them that you are invested in your conversation with them. And that way, when you try and tell them to put their phone away, they're going to listen to you because you've done it. So you're kind of modeling that experience for them. We want to work on controlling our responses and our reactions. I am the worst when it comes to my facial reactions and my body language. You can read me like a glove, but when I'm working with students who have anxiety, I really try hard to mask whatever it is that I'm experiencing or I'm feeling, so that way they can get it all out without stopping themselves. Because if they're talking about something and they see me go, oh, they might not finish what they're going to say. So little things like that we have to be more self-aware of. Oftentimes we try not to bring up the past with our students because they know it, especially when you get to the older students. They remember those things. We don't need to kind of harp on that stuff for them because it is in the back of their heads. We want to problem solve together, really work with them to come up with the answers, because if you just come up with the answers for them, they're never going to learn how to do that on their own. And the last thing is really plan a date for one-on-one activities with your child. It shows them that you are fully invested in them and what they're doing, and you're there to just have fun, kind of let loose and just play. So some more tips that we have for you. Help your child maintain a routine for sleep, meal times, and activities. I have an almost 2-year-old at home. Our day is so regimented, it's not even funny. But all of the things that I do for her are things that I tell parents to do for my adolescents. Just because there's a significant age difference doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need that routine and structure and consistency. They need to know what's coming and what's about to happen. It helps decrease their anxiety. We're going to work on anticipating stressful situations. We want to prep them with reminders. So at the high school, we had midterms. With my anxious kids, about 2 weeks before midterms, I was starting to have that conversation with them. So we know midterms are coming up. What are we doing to prepare for that? The week before, okay, midterms are next week. Which exams do you have on which days? What have you done to start studying for them? And then the couple of days before, so how far along are you in your studying? Really work with them and reminding them that this stressful situation is coming up, so that way it's not as stressful when it's there because they've already had all of that prep time. Family dinners, high point and low point. I know how hard it is with sports and activities and everything going on in our lives to have a family dinner. Holly tells me all the time the craziness of her Uber driving with her 2 high school kids. And I still am kind of a firm believer in family dinners whenever you can, because that's the time where you can sit down, put the phones away, and really talk with your kids about what's going on in their lives. And they might just say nothing or whatever, or stop asking me questions, Mom.
Right.
But those are the times that you really try to work with them on having the conversations. Oh, so this is what's going on in my life right now, and really helping them to learn more about you, and then you can learn more about them. We're going to work on teaching the relaxation, helping them to decrease that anxiety through de-stressful activities. So we're going to do guided imagery, which we're going to go over later, dim lights, warm baths, gentle music, meditation. So then, it's important to remember to focus on your support system. So often we talk about our students and what they have to support them, but you guys are kind of in the grunt of it also, and so it's important to remember that you need to support yourself while also supporting your student and your child.
And that's good role modeling, because at the teenage level, they absolutely catch on to your stress level or anything going on within the family, even if you don't think they hear what's going on. They tell us everything. So they're hearing it and they're taking it in and trying to, manage the stress, that day-to-day stress that goes on at home.
That's also at the elementary level.
Yeah.
They're smarter than we give them
I
credit
always say,
for.
little ears hear all.
Yeah, they do. They really do.
So it can be really overwhelming and hard as a parent to see your child going through these difficult times, and we fully understand that, and we expect you to kind of struggle with this, because this is something that you didn't necessarily expect to happen when you had children, and it's something that can be really challenging to navigate. The mental health field is not easy by any means, so it's really important to take care of yourself and to make sure that your supports are in place, so that way you can support your child.
Okay, so I have this as a handout too. I'm just going to go over some different types of coping skills that we talk about with our students and that you can talk about with your kids at home. The first one is self-soothing, and that's really looking at having your kids utilize their 5 senses to comfort themselves. So for example, having something to touch. The younger kids like the Play-Doh, the older kids like the stress balls.
The older kids like the Play-Doh also.
Something to hear. Teenagers a lot of the time like their music, need a few minutes to put their earbuds in, just to self-soothe and relax themselves. Or some white noise. Looking at something they can see, having visualizations. Some of my students like to have we'll look on the internet and say, what's something that's relaxing for you to look at? It could either be their animals or the beach or a vacation they went to, and putting that on their notebooks so when they're in class, they can have a visual that can help ground them when they're feeling really stressed out. Something to taste. I have a student that loves gum. He must go through a pack of gum a day, but that's just something that really grounds him and relaxes him. And something to smell, lavender, I actually have stress relief from Bath & Body Works lotion in my office, and students know what's in there. They'll just come and take a quick pump, and out the door they go. And it's like, okay, they're independently utilizing some self-soothing skills, which is great. The next one is distraction, and that's taking their mind off the stressor in the moment. That could be reading, that could be doing artwork, doing something physical as a distraction. The next one would be opposite action, and that's looking at changing the current unpleasant emotion with a more pleasant emotion, which will reduce the intensity of the anxiety. So some examples of that is when a student has a negative thought, you want to replace it with a positive thought. Looking at some positive affirmations, so they'll have that in their toolbox. So when I have that negative thought in my mind, switching it to a more positive thought. Or, if the feeling of anxiety is there, what would be the opposite? And you could ask them, okay, so if it's, they want to think about laughter, you could look at funny memes. And it's really teaching them that there's another feeling besides that unpleasant feeling that you want to replace it with. Emotional awareness has to do with identifying their feelings. With the younger kids, having a chart with different facial feelings that they could point to. The adolescents love the journals and writing out their emotions or drawing their emotions, just to make them more aware of what they're feeling in that moment.
There's also a really good visual, and I don't think we have it right now, but it is a kind of a pie chart with the basic emotions in the middle, and then as you move out, it has more detailed different emotions for the students, and I'll try and find it at the end. But I feel like I have some students who look at it and they're like, I'm sad right now, and then they kind of move their way out and they're like, actually no, I'm not really feeling sad right now, I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, and it really helps bridge that gap between just that basic emotion of feeling sad and feeling what else it is that might be going on in their lives.
And then they can move on to problem solve based on whatever they're feeling. The next one would be mindfulness, and these are tools for centering and grounding. Kids, this would be different mindfulness apps that we're going to go over later on, different breathing techniques, really grounding them in this moment, because this is all you have control over. Instead of those worry thoughts that go from 0 to 100, worrying about everything so quickly that they don't have control over. And the last slide is more about, if you have this toolbox of coping skills, but none of them are working and it's impacting your child's daily functioning, then it would be time to look at getting them into some treatment.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about proactive strategies. Those were kind of coping strategies in the moment, but what should we keep in mind? We know that we have a child that has anxiety, that may be worried about going to school, going to the dentist. I work at the elementary level, so we have some school avoidance sometimes, and sometimes it's test taking, sometimes it's riding the bus. It really could be anything. And what we try to work with all parents is to not avoid those things that cause anxiety. So this is probably the hardest part of anxiety, is that you want to, we think of anxiety as a hill. It builds and builds, it builds. It can get very, very intense. If any of you have been at the top of the hill with your child and you may think, okay, we're not going to go to school today. We drive all the way to the driveway, child is screaming and crying and just can't go in. I'm just going to turn around and go home. When you get off that, you avoid that, what happens is it reinforces that avoidance so that the next day, and you know, we know this, but when you're in it, and it's so hard to work with the child that's that escalated, it can be really hard. So we, at the elementary level, encourage you, if that's happening, reach out to us, because we have a plan that we can work with you. It does not have to be just you. You can talk with us and we can have a plan, but the biggest thing we're going to work on is getting your child in the door. And once they're in the door, what we tend to see is that their anxiety comes down. So anxiety is a feeling. Feelings come and go. We teach that a lot at the elementary level. Feelings are like waves on the ocean. They can be very big and intense. Sometimes they can be just licking at your feet. But they come and they go. And we ride them out because we don't want to be taken under by them. So when we avoid the feeling, we kind of perpetuate being taken under by the wave, and we do want to gradually expose the child to what it is fearful of in a gentle, supportive way. That's not, tough, go, come on, let's go. But gradually supporting that child up over the hill and coming back down. So Caitlin talked a lot about the cortisol and the parasympathetic nervous system that kind of gets activated when a child gets escalated. That is called your fight, flight, or freeze response. So when we feel threatened, any one of us, any human, feels threatened, we are going to react in one of those three ways. We're either going to become aggressive in either our words or in our physically. We're either going, that's fight. We're either going to escape and flee, that's flight, and then there's freeze. And sometimes there's a combination of a couple, and you might see, but we will see that. And knowing that that's typical, that this is a typical anxiety reaction, and it will pass. It won't stay forever. And some kids will say to me, I don't know what happened, I just kind of feel better. Because your body cannot maintain that level of escalation for days. It can't really even maintain it for more than a few hours. And some of us, our body kicks in and brings that cortisol down because, our bodies are really interesting kind of thing. So.
And that also goes into, I'm sure you guys see this too at the elementary level, but at the high school level, students will say, but I was vomiting this morning. Yes, we know, because that mind-body connection of the anxiety, the headaches are real, the stomach aches are real, all the physical stuff is real. But by not coming to school and avoiding the actual emotion of anxiety, it's you're still going to have the stomach ache. It's not going to get better because you're not going to learn to sit with it. So sitting with it is, yes, your stomach does hurt, but what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Well, I might vomit. I get a bucket in my office. I actually always have plastic around it because the kids are so nice, and we'll wrap it back up if they do happen to get sick in there. But they're not going to die. It feels like you are, but you're going to vomit, and then your body is going to, just like Cheryl said, come back down.
Homeostasis, yeah.
So, yes, so even if, students are vomiting or have headaches in the morning, we want to work with them. We want them in the door so that we can help them. And we verbalize this at age appropriately, what level they're at as to, why we're supporting them and why we want them in school, while validating the physical components, but working on the stress management at the same time.
Whatever type of anxiety reaction, fight, fright, freeze, and we are using the coping mechanisms that were on the previous screen. We have aromatherapy, we have the squeeze balls, we're using puzzles to self-soothe and self-regulate and wait to calm, because only then can we talk about feelings. So once the child is calm, we can maybe make a plan. So meditation and mindfulness is a big part of what we do, even though it will look differently depending on what age you're at. Daily exercise is really important, being able to get out, but we also will incorporate some of that in. I know in my school we incorporate taking walks, even if they're outside, and being able to take, I think it's on the next slide, being able to take a mindful walk. So we will walk and we will notice 5 things that are red, 5 things that are orange, 5 things. It's to be able to ground the student and help soothe. We're using lots of different techniques so that students can feel more centered. Daily exercise, sleep, eating, water, and downtime to decompress are all really, really important. Kids are very, very busy. Screen time, limiting that. Social media, there's research out that shows that, the more we're on Facebook, the more depressed we are. I mean, the correlation cannot be any more clear. So I think as adults, and I struggle with this, I have to put the phone down because it's addicting. And then we're going to look at some iPad apps that
I was just
can
going
be
to
used.
add one piece too, coming back to the screen time. Research has also shown that the physical lights on screens actually stimulate your brain, so it actually makes it harder for you to sleep. And Cheryl touched upon that adequate sleep is really important for children and adults. So I think they recommend no screen time, 1 to 2 hours before bed, so it gives your brain time to decompress and kind of deactivate from all the lights and the things that are on the screen. And I think that's a good time to encourage some more of the distraction techniques, like I saw Holly talked about, like reading, drawing, some of those more quiet activities before bedtime, or some of the apps that you can do exercises with.
Yep.
And the adolescents will be extremely resistant to this because they cannot miss the Snapchats and life after, 9 or 10 o'clock. But there is a little trick for those that have iPhones, that on screen time, as a parent, you can turn off their screen time at a certain time and their phone will freeze. And you can actually put what apps they're allowed to use. So if they say, but I really need Google Classroom to do my homework, well, you can actually let them have Google Classroom, but no social media, no Snapchat, no Instagram, none of that stuff. So you really can regulate phones now. And if all else fails, a family rule of everybody plugs in their phones outside in the hallway at a certain time, no matter what. Because I think it's really hard for the teenagers to put the phones down for fear of missing out on everybody else's social life.
Some of the things that we talk to kids once they are calm and they're in class that you can use when you're in the car is this first paragraph talks about teaching your kid to be a thought detective. That's kind of a word we use in the elementary level, but what we're trying to say is we're trying to teach kids to notice their thoughts. Not just have a thought and run with it, but actually notice and wonder if this thought is fact or is it a fear. So a lot of times I will hear, and from my own kids too, at bedtime, it's amazing how they just want to talk to me about all their worries and every ache and pain, but it all comes out at bedtime. The worries are there, they're talking, and the first part is to listen And I nod a lot because I gotta get out. And then sometimes I ask, is that what you think? Is that a thought? That's the thought in your head? You know, just the notice, is that the thought? So kids will come to my office, the teacher's gonna be so mad I didn't do my homework. She's gonna hate me. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah. You're thinking she's gonna hate you. Yeah, I can't go to class. Okay. Is that a fact or a fear? Because our kids, even as young as second grade, first grade, know what a fact and an opinion is. They're finding that in news articles. A fact is something that cannot be argued. The sky is blue. A fear is a worry thought, and it's not always based in fact. It's something that we kind of created, and then we just go with it. We buy a ticket and we're on the train. So we try to have kids notice their thought. But then we try to ask, is it a fact? If they say, oh, it's a fact, she's going to hate me, I don't do my homework, then where's the evidence? Even our kids know what evidence means. Where's the proof? Let's be detectives, let's be scientists, let's be researchers. We can do those kind of talking with them. Sometimes I'll take a piece of paper. I've done this at home with my kids, but also in my office. One side says fact, one says fear. I write down the fears, just so you can see, that one doesn't have much proof, but it is a fear, so it's true, it's a fear, let's write it down, but it's not, where are the facts? When kids don't do their homework, tell me the evidence, what is it? Oh, well, we just do it the next night, yep. You know, so we're really encouraging those things. There's a lot of, sometimes the worry thoughts show up as what ifs, and what ifs have no end. They never end. There's always another what if. So being able to notice, say I'm noticing, there's a lot of what if thoughts. What ifs are fears. Let's look at fact, what is happening right now. So bedtime can be a very difficult time for a lot of kids where the worries start to come out about the next day or something that has already happened. Using the grounding strategies of what is, that's a what if thought. Hearing them out, but saying I'm hearing a lot of fears, not so sure about the facts. I think what I notice is you need to get to bed. So we're going to talk a little bit about the apps that can help. This next part is once kids are calm and they've kind of gotten through the storm, I like to make with kids in school a checklist of things that they like that help them. Sometimes it's squishy, it's a squishy in their desk, sometimes it's coloring, it's whatever, sometimes it's looking at a book of World War II battle sites, you know, whatever it's their thing. So we personalize kind of a coping checklist because sometimes they can't think about what is going to make them feel. Nothing's going to make me feel better right now. So being able to calm and ground. You'll notice the slight signs that they're feeling better, and then taking the checklist out and saying, you're looking a little calmer. How about we color now? Okay. How about I put on this music now? You love country, now let's do country music. So using that, again, visuals are really helpful.
And role modeling that, because you might hear, well, that doesn't work, that won't work, no, and you go through the whole list. I have a student that has like 25 things on the list, and I'll get to 25, and it still didn't work. You know, so it's role modeling it, deep breathing, that won't work. And so as you're talking to them, do it. I did that to a student in my office today. I just was sort of silent and did some breathing to role model, and I could tell that her breaths were then starting to slow down without me saying, why don't we try deep breathing? Because she was like, that's not gonna work, you know? So I just did it, and then she followed, and you could see her whole body relax. So having that sort of cheat sheet at home that works at home is good, so that you can offer it and then role model it.
And make sure you practice the stress. Again, they're not going to practice them when they're anxious. It's definitely when they're feeling better.
So we have a little video. If you just click on belly breathing. It's geared more towards the elementary level. It's a Sesame Street video, but I really love it because it talks about a lot of the anxieties that our students have.
girl.
You
You don't really want me to
It's
sing it.
really fun with with his voice though.
Technical difficulties.
Because it should be coming out at least under your computer.
Right now, our staff is calmly breathing. And they're very
We thought we checked all the things that could go wrong.
Be prepared.
And we are all expressing empathy in this situation.
I hear you.
There we go.
So cute.
Let me see if those speakers work. If not, I'll unplug it. My grandmother loved this. Sorry, you can't hear it as well.
Sometimes the monster that's inside you is a monster that is mad. It's a monster who is angry. It's a monster who feels bad. When your monster wants to throw things and your monster wants to shout, there's a way to calm your monster and chill your inner monster out. Monster may appear at any time and any place, and that my monster will make you make a mad monster face. He makes you wanna push, he makes you wanna shove. There's a way to calm that monster, bring out the monster love. And now I feel like myself again. Everybody just, everybody just.
So now you can see why I love it. It's something that I've used with my high schoolers also. It really helps them to distract because it is comical, but then it also helps them to kind of come back into the here and now and grounds them to, okay, I'm just going to stop everything that I'm thinking about and breathe. And I have them put their hands on their belly and really work on doing exactly what it says.
And breathing exercises, like the belly breathing, Cheryl and I both spoke about the fight or flight response and the hormones in your body, cortisol and adrenaline that are released. Doing exercises that promote breathing actually release the hormones in your body that counteract the adrenaline and the cortisol, so they actually start to suppress it and actually start to bring your body down so that you can engage in other things. So breathing is really, really helpful for kids.
So another in-the-moment strategy that we can use is we're going to help our child to pretend to blow up the balloon. Take that deep breath and blow it up at the count of 5 and count with them to 5. It helps, again, to take their breath and slow it down so that way they can breathe and come back down. Another one is saying to them, I can do this, and really saying it over and over again and having them repeat it with you. Saying it, you can say it in different funny voices, helps them laugh. Helping them laugh helps them to distract from their anxious thoughts. Another one that I know Cheryl and Caitlin do at the elementary level, but it's something that I also do at the high school level, is really working with our students on putting our worries on the shelf. I'll sometimes have students write down all of their worries and say, okay, thank you, these are my worries. Now when I physically take that piece of paper from them and say, this is mine, I'm going to hold on to it for you, we'll come back to it when we need to. more often than not, I'll ask them the next day or a couple days later if these are the things that they're still worried about. Nope, that thought has gone on. And so helping to take that away from them is really helpful to change their thought process.
And you could do this at home and make like a worry box. I do this with students too. Let them decorate the worry box with visuals, more stress-free visuals. And they have a worry, you talk about it, you put it away into the box, we're gonna let it go, and now it's time for bed. Or now it's time to move on to the next activity, that you're validating it, but you can't solve it right now, so we're gonna sort of put it on the shelf. I did that with a student last year. Every week, we would put something in the worry box. And it was really cool because then at the end of the year, I said, let's break out that worry box. And we went through every worry. And she was able to say, wow, those all worked out. All that worrying that I put all this mental energy into, and they all worked out. And now this year, she doesn't use the worry box anymore. So it's a good way to sort of put it up on a shelf. Yeah, get rid of the box. Or you can do distraction techniques.
I don't want to wait. So, speaking of the next one, distraction technique. So we're going to work with them on counting things. You can say, okay, let's count how many pieces of paper are in this stack. Let's count how many stars are in the sky, if it's something like that you really need at bedtime. Anything that you can do to help them to distract from that worry thought.
And that's a good strategy in the classroom. I'll say to students, what's your favorite color? Whatever it is. Okay, you can be in class and look around the room and nobody sees that you are grounding yourself by finding 5 things in the room that's red. And it distracts them and grounds them to the moment instead of, I need to get up and I need to leave the room right now.
So then also it's important to remember that children who are anxiety prone often feel like they have to hold on to that anxious feeling until it's done and it has been solved. But so often, a lot of their anxious thoughts and their anxious worries are about things that they don't have control over. And so it's really important to remind them of, is this something that you have control over, or is this something that you don't? And helping them to see what they can control and what they can't control, so that way we can kind of gear their anxious thoughts towards, okay, so I can do something about this situation. I can't do anything about that. So I'm going to reframe it and I'm going to work on coming up with an alternative solution.
We talked more about, here's another grounding exercise. So there's visual grounding exercise about colors, but this is one that talks about all your senses. So 5 things you see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear. I love having kids get real quiet and notice sound. That really can slow down the thoughts of that worry train. So that's another grounding exercise when a child's in the throes of one of those reactions.
We actually have little cheat sheet cards that we hand out at the high school, and with that little 5 things exercise, I had a student who was testifying in court, and she went up there and she said, hold on 1 minute. She pulled it out of her wallet and she read it through. She said, okay, I'm ready now. And she proceeded to go on. So just that little piece of, okay, I have this toolkit and I have my coping strategy. I know that I can use it to help me through this really difficult time in my life.
Talking about the what if, so many times when a child might be stuck in an anxiety, sometimes I will talk with them about the worst possible scenario in an effort to show that sometimes the fear isn't, what they think might happen isn't really all that bad. Sometimes I will use fact and evidence. So a child that is riding the bus and is afraid to ride the bus for fear of getting sick on the bus, sometimes that's an ongoing anxiety that we just kind of keep revisiting it. One strategy that really worked was me listening and saying, okay, this is important. How many times have you thrown up on the bus? Never. Okay, how many times have you ridden the bus? Well, like every day. you're in third grade, so twice a day, how many days of school? You know, and I got the calculator out and I did the math, and it was thousands of times you have ridden the bus, you've never thrown up. And I'm like, I don't gamble. I could. I would put money on this. And she was like, yeah, like that fact, that how likely is this by looking at past evidence of it happening kind of sometimes can help. But that's, I think that's a good strategy in the moment when it's one of those broken record worries that you're like, okay, we're doing this again. Oh dear, I don't know what to say. We've done all the things. So sometimes looking at more of the fact and what do you think might happen? And then visualization is a great strategy too. We can use pictures. There's beautiful stock footage on the internet of beaches, but we can also use a lot of great apps. The next slide has a bunch of, some are free, some are paid subscriptions. I don't know if any of you have any of these. Some of them are meditation apps, but some are like Colorfly, are distracting kind of calming apps that you can, the Relax app is one where I have them on my iPad and I can show you at the end, where you can touch the screen and it kind of makes these sparks. It's just another calming app.
We have handouts of them in the back,
Oh,
if anyone's interested.
The high school. We'll post this to the website so that you have it
And
and can refer to
I
it.
always, depending on the student that I'm working with and their personality, I will recommend a couple and I'll say, go home, not right now when you're stressed. I have them all on my iPad so they can use it in my office, but to put one or two on your phone so that you have them. You can be walking down the hallway with one button and nobody knows that you're using some of these strategies before you walk into your next class that may be a trigger for you. Because we really want to teach, the independence of being able to use these strategies when they need them.
And I think also at the high school level, being able to have kind of that independence over their anxiety helps them to learn that they have control over it.
The Calm app is one of my personal favorites. I use it in my office and I use it at home. It is a subscription. It is one of the few meditation apps where the speaker isn't creepy. Okay, so that's like big for kids. Like, first of all, you want me to stop and breathe. Like, what? This is creepy. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard buy. It's a hard sell, right? It's hard to buy in. The Calm app has a narrator that is just like, she's not creepy. So I would encourage you to check
That's
that out.
one that I use also in a lot of my groups. They have a lot of different areas within the app, so you can kind of gear it towards whatever it is that you're feeling. So for some of my students, I've used one of the meditations that's around being in the moment. For another group, I used one that was about relaxation. So it's a really great app to have.
And we introduce it as it's a skill you have to learn. We don't all automatically relax, especially if we're anxious. That's a hard thing to do. I do different relaxation strategies before every group. And at the beginning of the year in September, they're like, what is going on in here? Now they walk right in, it's total silence, and they'll ask which one they want. So they realize which one's going to be most effective. And you can see just all the students can relax a little bit so that then they can, get to work. And it's only like 3 to 5 minutes.
And it's funny, we've had students be like, we'll ask them, so when was the last time that you sat and relaxed? And they said, last group. So it's really nothing that they do on their own. So we're working to integrate it into their daily living.
Especially by senior year, because then by senior year, when you work with the seniors that are heading to college, when they walk in your office, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? Because you need to be independent next year when you're in college, because there's not on-demand therapy when you feel like this in college. So they'll whip out their phone, they'll use some of their skills for, however long it takes before we process, but really helping them to see that they independently can use these skills that they have learned. So when they're out of high school, they're able to have a toolbox. This is some resources, interface referral service. We have handouts for that agency. It's a great hotline where you call and they can connect families with therapists based on whatever the need is. You can describe it, this is, the presenting problem is anxiety, and this is how old, my son or daughter is, and they prefer a female, a male, confrontational, not, this is my insurance. The more information you give them, the better, because they have a whole database. And then they call you back, and they'll say, what's your availability? And they'll call you back with an appointment. Years ago, when we didn't have this, we would give you like 10 numbers, and sometimes you would call 10, and there'd be wait lists, and they wouldn't call back, and it's exhausting. They do all that, and then they call you.
We take that legwork out for you.
And SSCIT.org is another great one. It's South Shore Coalition of Independent Therapists. Those are therapists that are in private practice. You can go on their website, again, and put in like, Pembroke and however far you want to go, a radius of 10 miles, and this is the specialty that you want. And there's pictures and biographies of the therapist. So that's another good resource for outpatient supports. And this is the list of all our district social workers and psychologists, which is awesome, because when I started here 15 years ago, I was the only social worker in the district, and I love to see the screen with all the mental health staff that we now have in the district to help our students. So if you have any specific questions about your child, these would be the people, the first go-to people. They can help you out.
One more.
Oh, sorry. One of the most important slides.
So we wanted to, we'll take questions at the end, but we did kind of want to end on this slide, and I think we all sort of touched upon in some form the importance of self-care. So we are all parents ourselves, and we know that it is a demanding, draining, but also really very rewarding job. But in order to have energy for our children, we need to be able to take care of ourselves first. And I think a lot of the things that were talked about in this presentation also apply to us as adults with regard to the form of self-care. We need to be taking care of our minds, whether it's, setting boundaries, taking breaks from social media. Maybe it's working towards our own individual or personal goals. Maybe taking care of our body, which comes down to eating, sleeping, exercising, all of those important things. Sometimes we need to be taking care of our relationships, that we're connecting with the people that we're close with, having fun, laughing, pursuing our own hobbies and interests. And then even in our work lives, having friends and allies at work that you can connect with, delegating work if it's too much for you, asking for help, and sort of sticking to those limits that you create. And then also, we need to take care of our inner spirits, whether it's, meditating, being outside in nature and taking time for ourselves. And there's a copy over there of sort of like a self-care wheel, so that we can kind of identify our own strategies, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're not going to be able to take care of the people that need us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
General kind of questions for anybody?
Yep.
Mine's very general. You kept mentioning a website. Could you please tell me what website that is?
Sure, so our Pembroke K12.org, our schools, our district's website, under student services, there is an entire section on mental health kind of supports. So not only are presentations this year posted there, but we also have several different kind of categories, for instance, anxiety and resources for families, between some of the things they've talked about, the wheels, the interface referral, some videos, some links to different other books and things like that. So Sorry for not clarifying.
That pie chart of emotions,
Yep.
is that on the site too?
It can be.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
The pie chart,
The
the
pie chart.
emotions.
Sure, so
Yep.
some of the resources that they've made some copies of, we can also put there, some are already there because the social workers spent some of their professional development time working to create the resources, so they've been up for a couple months, but some families aren't as familiar, so we'll make sure those are there too.
If you email the social worker at your building, then we can get that to you.
Excellent. And it just helps be more specific towards,
Mhm.
like, I'm not sad anymore.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's wonderful.
When you've each mentioned a group, your group that you're working with, how are the students getting into your groups? Like what brings them there?
A lot of different things. So this year I've gotten referrals through IEP teams, I've gotten referrals from the nurse, I've gotten referrals from guidance counselors, I've gotten referrals from teachers, from administrators. It kind of runs the gamut of what's going on with that student and what kind of support do they need in the building right now to be able to get through their day.
Okay.
So all of the buildings have what's called a student support team. So it consists of administrators, mental health staff, assistant principals, nurses, guidance, depending on the level. And teachers or guidance bring a concern to the kind of the group and the table and talk about kind of what's the issue at hand, whether it's an academic issue, a social emotional issue, and then there's kind of an intervention plan created. And check-in points to see if those kind of interventions, such as joining a group, maybe individual counseling, has an impact.
I also had a parent recently call me
Okay.
and just say, this is what's going on with my kid right now. What kind of resources are available for her?
Right. Okay.
This was a 12th grader who
Right.
has never come across our radar before.
So a lot of times it's through general education, so these are supports that can happen through general education, and there's other times students are in special education, and what Rachel referred to as an IEP, so students have specific goals in counseling on their IEP, but you don't have to be in special education to access kind of the resources of the district.
So to look at what the presenting problem is and what we think professionally would be the best intervention. Would it be a group? Would it be individual? Would it be outpatient? Would it be family therapy? What would be the intervention that would most impact the issue at hand? And then our groups just depend every year on what the needs are of the students. Lots of anxiety groups, we'll have lots of social skills group, we have a substance abuse insight group up at the high school. So we sort of look at what are the needs that year and what type of groups need to be formed.
We have, at the elementary level, a very similar process. I think sometimes the focuses might be a little different just because of the difference with ages. I know I do a lot of what I call like lunch bunch groups, so working with, kindergarten, first, second graders just on, some basic friendship skills and how to get along with each other and share in conversation, but also looking at other needs of the kids. Some of the older 5th and 6th graders, sometimes it's, I'll have like a 5th grade girls group where we talk about issues that are important to them and things that are going on in their life. 6th grade, there's usually a lot of, worry and fear about the transition to middle school, so coming up with strategies and how they can support each other in that transition and kind of proactively looking at that.
And I think our younger students, we also go into the classroom and may teach a lesson or go in during morning meeting and show, read a book about fear or worry to the whole class. So we do more, some larger interventions too to kind of just teach. So we run the gamut.
Any other kind of general
When do you
questions?
do the high school groups, like during Titan time or?
It depends. A lot of them are during Titan time. It works out great the last couple of years of having the Titan time. And other times, it would be during students' electives because we don't ever take kids out of their main classes unless it's a crisis. So it'd be during one of their 2 electives. And then as the group leaders would say, what would be a good match? What would be the strengths and, challenges of each student and what would make a good group? So we do both.
If you know there's a certain trigger for your child, and it's the same thing every single day at school, and there's no way to avoid it. Like my daughter, it's the cafeteria. She can't stand the smells, the noise, the smells, all of it. She gets through it, but she comes home and she cries about it. And it's like, because she just gets so upset talking about it. So I know that's her trigger. So just the same thing, like the breathings, and just try to get her to, maybe before she goes into there, try to get her to do that.
I
It's
think
like,
if
we
we
know
have
it's
a
a trigger.
clear trigger, we can come up with some strategies to support her during that time, and sort of Cheryl talked about not avoiding a situation, because that can make a situation worse and kind of reinforces that, but giving them the strategies to work through that. I know in the lunchroom at the elementary level, it can be very loud and overstimulating. We have kids that sometimes will wear like noise canceling headphones in the cafeteria because it's too loud, or if it is a a smell thing, maybe bringing something that smells good to them, whether it's like an orange or if it's that lotion, like something like that, but trying to get to the nitty gritty about what could help them during that stressful situation.
She powers
But you
through.
make a good point of not avoiding, like, even, they make it through it, it's uncomfortable, it's not gonna be fun, but you did it. So trying to help them see that they were able to get through it, but even though it was very uncomfortable, because what we don't wanna see is then they get up to the high school, and here they are in 12th grade, and they've never been in the lunchroom, and they wanna sit in guidance, but they're applying to colleges.
Well, I think because she's never given the option to not do it. We've
then I
never
think
told her she's allowed to not do
Really
it.
praising her after for being
Yeah.
able to sit with that uncomfortable
It's so good.
feeling and praising her to say, look, you did it, you got through, you did a great job today.
And letting staff know, because we do things that the students don't know we do. I have a student that I'm always watching, making sure he's somebody to sit with, and if he doesn't, I go over to certain kids and I say, can you go ask him to sit with you? They'll go over and then, and we all sort of work together, but at least the important thing is managing it so that they know they can find some success.
I just don't like her feeling bad.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
you.
you coming out.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Don't forget your handouts on the